find me in the spot where the floppies be. Till I give it a read, keep it crisp in the sleeve. Every Tuesday night feels like Christmas Eve. Living between Wednesdays.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews. And tonight I'm joined by Paul Veenstra, and we're going to talk about their new comic, Moonstone. Paul, thanks for coming on the show.
It's great to be here, Konrad.
Glad to hear it. Paul, first easy question for the folks who've maybe never heard your name, never seen your face, or never heard of Moonstone. Who is Paul Veenstra?
Well, to be honest, Konrad, I'm still trying to figure that one out for myself. No, we all have lives outside of our comic book or creative endeavors. But I guess I've always been striving to be recognized as an artist. So I guess what does that mean to me? Well, an artist to me is really a storyteller. You could take music, film, interpretive dance. It's all telling a story. So I see myself as a storyteller, striving to build upon a legacy of storytellers. You can imagine storytelling as the oldest art form, and it's potentially the beginnings of art in itself, the human experience. So I look back to the development of storytelling, from painting pictures on a cave wall to adding some flute to that. And then maybe, everybody gets involved and it evolves. And where are we today? We've got so many mediums, experiences, and, where's the future taking us when it comes to storytelling? So my goal and hopefully my legacy would be to evolve or build upon the legacy that others have done and inspire those, because I've been inspired myself, so to inspire others. So that is who Paul Veenstra is. He's looking to inspire.
I love it, and I think with Moonstone you will. So before we dive into all the questions that I've got for you about Moonstone, because I quite like it, for the folks, again, who've never seen it, what's Moonstone?
Well, so Moonstone, we've got levels here, and we'll start on the surface. Moonstone, it's, the quintessential fantasy epic, good versus evil. So there's your surface level. You go a little deeper. It's a tale about young adults. It's perhaps a coming of age story about young adults facing, I guess, adversity, but also, the struggles that one would encounter when going from, childhood to adulthood. And I guess the moral would be, the value of the human bond, people coming together, or I guess as a young person pulling through it with your friends or your family. So that's Moonstone on another level, but we could keep going deeper and deeper if you'd like. You can look at Moonstone. So the name Moon and Stone. So Moon is say the spirituality, the element of spirituality. The stone is a physical element representing the body, so the soul and the body, and also there's that duality that you're going to see a theme reoccurring time and time again: light and dark, these binary forces. In developing Moonstone, I thought, how do we add depth to stories? We've got so many people creating so much amazing. It's all amazing. But how do we go further and add depth to this Moonstone, or this just idea that I had? You could take Tolkien, for instance, and he created a language. He created races. He created maps with, very detailed locations and names. And back then, that was unheard of, right? Nowadays, everyone's making new languages up. Avatar is basically, you can hear that at the grocery store now. And so I thought, how do I add depth? And I'm not going to go out and try to make a new language because I just am simply not interested. But and I thought, so yeah, that was my goal, to add a new layer of depth. So I kind of merged two of my great passions. So I love fantasy stories, and I love that rawness and the the very human element of the fantasy, the low fantasy world, mind you. So there might be some supernatural stuff, but not too much heavy on the magic. So I merged it with a bit of a scientific background, and so what I mean by that is particularly the celestial and geological sciences. So the Moonstone, the moon, it's a celestial body. It represents space and time, and which are factors, obviously, in all of our lives. And then the stone, which is Earth, it's history, but it's stone, it's rock. We have the history of the Earth painted out before us every day, when we look at the rocks or the history, the geological history. So that is a component in the story, and not, for instance, time travel directly. They don't hop in a time machine and go on back. But those are part of the story, the conception of the Moonstone. It was forged in a celestial event. The history of the Earth. How did it get to this point? The rocks that the characters are standing on, what's their story? And it's all part of the grand story around Moonstone.
Okay.
So I may be going a little too way out there here, but I guess it also represents the characters as well. So the characters are going through a struggle, and I don't want to go too deep into all the different elements of it, but that changing, that dynamic change that you're seeing happening in the Earth's history is the struggle in which the characters are also enduring. So we can, I may have gone a little too far there.
I love it, Paul, for one very, very keen reason, which is you've put that much level of thought into it that it never even occurred to my mind to go there. So you've put in that much thought into Moonstone. It tells me two things. One, you've got great planning skills, which is great, because it's going to make whatever comes next interesting and captivating. But two, you're thinking long term, which I love. So to reel it in and just a little bit avoid spoilers, because I don't want to give too much away. Moonstone 1, is it out? Can anyone get their hands on it?
Not currently. There's a preview on our website, and I do have some stuff on the Instagram. If you're gonna delve into there, you can see almost the first two scenes on there.
Okay.
So I've been teasing people with it, but I really I've come to realize that Kickstarter is a fantastic medium to promote your product, and it's to generate a great release campaign. So it's going to be officially released on Kickstarter as of, my goal is May 2nd, but we're aiming for that.
Okay. Important question then. So for the folks watching, is there, because I've never set up a campaign myself. I've done this for a lot of people who do them. Do you have the pre-launch page up yet that people can go and check out?
Yes, we do have it up. And through our website, you can navigate your way there. So
perfect.
It's all,
Links down below. First link will take you straight to it. That way you can get yourself notified for when it releases.
Great.
Awesome. Where to start then? I am so happy, Paul, that you've got such a rich investment, mentally, so much built into it already. But I think Moonstone, the first book, it's, oh God, how many pages? I want to say 30-ish pages, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's 32, including front and back cover.
Okay, so standard comic. And basically the first couple pages, which people can check out on your website, sort of establish and introduce the universal force of the darkness, and then we meet an owl. I want to know. I'm not sure how much I want to give away with spoiler questions. You know what? We'll start with the protagonists. How about that? So the two main characters we meet in issue 1, Miro and Sage. When we meet them, Miro is a prince, we learn, and Sage is basically unconscious on the ground, and Miro comes upon her while hunting. What I didn't realize is there's a fair bit of, at least from the research I did, there's a fair bit of symbolism in their names. Sage, obviously being usually a wise person, and when I looked up Miro, the name basically had to do with, now it's slipping my mind, but can you explain how you came up to those names?
Well, it was a process. The names weren't those obviously on day one, and they evolved just like the story has. So, my first thought was, why don't I go with something good like Romeo and Juliet? But unfortunately, that was already taken. So, but no, there were some factors, obviously. The names should be simple, memorable, and unique. Additionally, with Miro more so, universal to some degree. Mm-hmm. So you're not saying that's an English name, that's a whatever, name that sounds, it's unto itself a unique name. So, Miro to me, embodies confidence, someone who, shows, strength, that he's the protagonist. You should look to him. He's not perfect. He has his own unique struggles. And I think as you go and learn him better or get to know him better, you will find he's not as confident maybe as he makes himself out to seem. And in terms of Sage, the name, wisdom, obviously, there's an ambiguity to Sage. So is it a masculine name or is it a feminine name? And it's not that I'm trying to play on her gender, but I'm trying to play on perhaps what is she really, Mm-hmm. She's ambiguous as almost even as a human being. Not to say she's not a human being, but I wanted to present that ambiguity. So that's a little taste there for.
Yes. I don't know, and tell me if you don't want me to ask the question, so we can edit this later if need be. I would love to ask about Sage and the darkness. Given that comes towards the end of the issue, would you prefer to avoid that question?
No, I don't. I think we can tiptoe around it in a way which only provides more captivation.
Okay, perfect. So fairly early on, when Miro meets Sage, it's hinted at that she's got a lot of interesting powers. She has this Moonstone, which she uses to heal a wound on his cheek, and it's revealed that she's blind, which I thought was very interesting because what's introduced as an evil force, the darkness, which appears to be, because when we see it, it's basically going after an owl, it seems, is this thing that is pursuing her. And yet, what I found interesting is she herself is blind, so her world is darkness. And I liked that, now that you've said what you previously mentioned about the ambiguity of Sage, it very much so thematically fits. Can you talk about sort of, again, avoiding spoilers, can you talk about her connection to maybe the darkness and how she'll impact Miro's life?
So both Miro and Sage, and this is something I should have mentioned maybe with regards to your previous question, they're both trying to escape. There's a certain destiny, you could say. So Miro is destined to be king, and he's been told that for his whole life, And so he's come to resent that identity, not to mention that, and we're going to go into this in a further question, I would imagine, but that the kingdom that he's a part of is not as illustrious as the past, and his very childhood, which was full of hope, and I'm sure a lot of people could identify with a childhood full of hope and dreams and aspirations. When they reach adulthood, or when they're getting to that pivotal point in their lives, they're starting to realize that reality in itself is not what they maybe thought it would be. Sage, on the other hand, she's, as you mentioned, escaping from a dark force. As I coined it in my trailer and some of the promotional material, it's an ancient evil. So obviously that's tying back to time and whatnot, which we spoke about. So they're both escaping, running away from something, and it's their own destiny that has been laid out before them. So why does that have to do with Sage's blindness? Well, Sage, so there's an inner conflict here between both characters. Sage is blind, so it presents a certain innocence about her. There is a certain innocence to her from the very first time Myra meets her. She seems very sweet and could do no wrong, yet the darkness has pursued her, and it's causing potentially destruction to the land now and to other people that are getting caught in the crossfire, which of course she's obviously, I'm sure, aware of, and she's going to have to deal with that. But additional to that, no one can be so sweet and innocent, and so her blindness is representative of her past. So we've talked about the past being a component geologically, but also within the characters, her past is something that there's darkness, shrouded in darkness. So does she remember? Has she blocked it out, the traumatic events that have happened to her? Does she remember some and has forgotten some? This is all unclear in the first issue. So the darkness in itself is representative of her own psyche, even more so than the physical manifestation of crows wreaking destruction, which is all going to be explained. There isn't, they're not just normal crows, of course, and maybe they're not even birds. But, the actual physical element, or the psychological element of her and the darkness being actually her, and the light being, the light being cast on her secrets or her past, or her recognizing and being able to open up through, like we said in the beginning, the moral of the human connection. So I hope in essence that answered your question.
Yes, very much so. It's, again, I'm finding the level of thought that you've put into this continues to amaze me, and it's fantastic. So I guess I want to ask, how long has Moonstone been an idea locked up in your brain, and when did you start writing it? When did the idea click, and then when did actually, well, I imagine it was a keyboard, but when did pen hit paper? I've been film. I'm making. Sorry, now I'm starting to. All my eloquentness is gone now for the rest of the interview. No, I've been involved in film and the literary arts for as long as I have been able to participate in those art forms. So I made a number of art forms. I was attending Comic Con 2017. We presented a animated pitch comic to go along with it, and so me and my brothers, in fact, we were hoping to get into the media, to crack the media nut. We're from Canada, and to go to California, and San Diego, and now Los Angeles, and all that was to us, a big deal. Yeah. And it's also growth for me to realize, and you don't just go in and knock on a door and all of a sudden, it's a lot of work, just like anything in this world. And so we I made a number of animated comedies and films, and it came to a point in my life where because right now I'm currently 33,
And this was about 4 or 5 years ago in my late 20s. And I thought, all this work, I've enjoyed it. I've made some fun stuff, but I wouldn't call it art. I would not call it art. I'd call it nice and fun, but not art. So I thought I need to make something that I truly think is art. I want to buckle down, and easier said than done, because it's a project that for the first few years took a lot of traction, to get going. Like, I would write a script and 100 pages. It would take me months, and then I'd hate it and throw the whole thing out and write it again. And I'd pick out maybe only a few parts of it that I liked. And, to be honest, I can't remember the process. I mean, it went on for a year or two like that. But then there was one key event that happened in my life that completely changed Moonstone. And It was almost a spiritual event that occurred to me. And I wrote about it on my website and my blog briefly. So I was coming home from work, and I had my DSLR camera, and I don't bring it to work often. I mean, I just happen to have it. Yeah. So that was in itself a bit of a coincidence. As I pulled into the driveway, there, right before the vehicle, was a small baby owl. And it was only, it was extreme. It was just a juvenile owl. And I've never seen you don't see owls grown or...
Yeah.
But it was just gorgeous. But it wasn't that it was just the owl. There were 3 crows surrounding it, and they were harassing it, and I could tell there was ill intent. So I quickly whipped out my DSLR and shooed away the crows, and I grabbed a shot of it, and it was just a beautiful picture, like gorgeous. And then the little owl flew away, and I kept my eye out the back door, and the crows did come back, but they couldn't find him. They took off again, and it kind of inspired me. So that's the first scene of Moonstone right there.
That's cool.
Yeah, and from there it grew, and I took some of the pieces from the previous scripts, and I thought, I took all the stuff I didn't like, all the stuff that wasn't the best, and I said it needs to, every scene, every part needs to be, to me, perfect and the best. So I was very critical, and then I rewrote it, and then I rewrote it again, and I rewrote it about 3 more times. And then I started to work with artists, developing characters and the settings and the castle, which isn't even shown. I think it's briefly shown in issue 1, a very small image of it. But it's the detail. I've designed every single room. I've designed both interior and exteriors of the entire castle. I have over 100 images of every single facet of the castle, because it's the depth that I just explained earlier that I think makes a story compelling. And the castle itself is a character. It's a castle that was once glorious and wondrous, and now it's decrepit and it's falling apart. And Myro is almost ashamed, that this is his. So that's
so one. I will ask for that picture. That way I can show it both now and earlier while you were telling the story, because that's definitely incredible. Talk about inspiration. When it comes to the one, I'm gonna bug you about the art and your process of finding your artist. But yes, the castle appears in, technically, I think you could argue 2 panels or 1 big one. But it's a massive castle. And the fact that you've, again, like, I'm continually impressed by the level of thought that went into it. Like, it almost reminds me of Tolkien. Because I remember hearing stories, and I think primarily from, like, the behind-the-scenes stuff of the Lord of the Rings films. So if you're out there and you know what a DVD is, or, God, a Blu-ray, because that's probably not, find, like, the extended edition, watch the behind the scenes stuff, because it talks about Tolkien literally, like, writing almost all of Lord of the Rings, going, nope, it's not perfect, restart, and again until it was perfect. So that's wild to me. I guess an easy question, Paul, is, without getting too ahead of ourselves, because you've got Kickstarter for issue 1 coming up May 2nd. How much Moonstone is there? Like, what is actively written script-wise? What is in your mind? Like, does it have an end yet? Like, where is that living in reality?
I love your question. Moonstone is fully written. This 10-part series, or it may end up being 12 if we run over time, whatever. It's already all written. But obviously, as we go, and my artists, they're fantastic. They may have feedback, and as things come into life, they may take on a new form. So obviously, it's being adapted, but the process is quite streamlined now. So I've made all the settings, I've made all the characters, I've made the full first story, Moonstone, whatever it is you want to call it, one. I know I've got, now that's all real in the real world. In my head, we've got Moonstone 2 and 3, but let's just get one.
Exactly. Let's get one out there, and then we can worry about 10, and then 30, and more.
I have to stop myself. If I get going and I start thinking about Moonstone 2 or 3, I have to say, like, just wake up, man. Like, just focus on. You got enough work to worry about right now. Don't start going down that road.
I love the excitement, the enthusiasm, though. It's fantastic. Paul, one thing I do want to make sure I ask is your artist. So, and correct me if I say these wrong. John Lee, L.I., and Mikola Mikey?
I'm not 100% sure. I haven't actually had a voice chat with Mike. But just on the subject of my artists, I went through, I guess, a difficult path to find them. If you'd like to hear this story, I'm glad to share it.
Yeah.
So I started to create Moonstone, and I worked for a whole year with an artist. And we created almost the first full issue, believe it or not. And so you can imagine I invested several thousand of my own equity into this. And I'd like to write in my blog about the experience, not negative towards the artist themselves, but just in the procedure with working with with outsourcing or whatever, with someone who's abroad or whatever, or regardless of where they are. Some criteria. If it's good to set deadlines, and if deadlines are continually missed, then that's a red flag. So and that was the issue. Deadlines kept going longer and longer without seeing content, but I was invested, and it was a very hard decision to pull the plug. But I kind of realized that if I don't, then the more deeper I go in, the potentially the worse it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I was at a loss, and I felt the project. I was losing love for it. But then I decided I can't do this. I have to stay determined. So I went on to Behance, or maybe I'm not pronouncing that right, but Behance, the art website. Are you familiar with that?
Not at all.
Behance.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
It's a portfolio website, and it's not just digital artists. There's design, architectural, all kinds of different kinds of artists there. And I discovered John Lee on that website, and immediately he fell in love with the project. And he said, I'm going to have to get deep into the material. And I said, yes, you sure are. And he read the whole script. That was, to me, that was important. The first artist that I hired, I think he read about 20 pages in and then just kind of thought that's enough. But John Lee read the whole thing front to back. He immediately started sketching out characters and interpreting them in his own way. Because I had some initial character designs made up of Myro, of Sage. Yeah. He transported them to his style, and our communication is fantastic. We have an app. We chat not every day, but almost every day. That communication is essential. When he has a question, I have an answer. when I have a question, he has an answer. And the feedback cycle is beautiful, because he can dig his heels in and say, Paul, I think you're missing this, or I'll say, well, I have an explanation for you, and I'll explain myself, and if my explanation is good enough, then but if it's not, then I may have to concede. We're both willing to give and take, and we both love the project. So the love that he has is apparent in that.
That's so good, because given you've written this whole thing, you're clearly in love with it. You're very passionate about it. You've written a lot of it, so you're in for the long haul. To have an artist that, how to say this politely, to have an artist that isn't afraid to push back and go, hey, this won't work and here's why. And to not just fold because it's your vision, it's your baby, I should just shut up and do this and get paid. That resilience for your artists, awesome, because it will create that better final product.
Definitely.
Yeah. I wanted to emphasize this as well. Earlier you mentioned you're Canadian. What province are you from?
I'm in Ontario.
Awesome. And your artist, John Lee, where's he located?
Well, John Lee and Mikola Maikai, they're in Ukraine.
Awesome. I guess you've kind of described the process, which is fantastic. I'm very curious, what's different from your original designs for Sage and Myro compared to what I'm looking at on the page?
Well, I think I should write a blog post about that too. It's the level of detail, and John asked me what my inspirations were for the characters. So he wanted to go to the root of my inspirations. So, and I think with the castle and with the characters and with the world I've created, I wanted to create a world that's both familiar and unfamiliar, both, canny and uncanny. Like, it's a medieval styled film, or not film, but world.
Yeah.
But I want it to feel transcendent of culture. So it could be a mix of European, Asian, and African cultures. And I'm kind of, at the core, it's African culture. So it's basically African culture with all the others kind of adding to that. Mm-hmm. So I picked some unique outfits from a Namib castle guard that I found on the internet, the flowing robes and this apparel. And I sent that to him, and I said, this was my inspiration for not so much Myro, but more for the castle guards. And he went with that, and that's where that flowing robe of Myro's comes from, which is beautiful because it not only creates a visual dynamic in the page, but it also becomes the coverings of Sage. He gives her his robe, and off the robe off his back, and it becomes in its way a very unique artistic point. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. Is this the opening shot of him? All right, on the second page of it, and I'll put up the specific frame. It's of him he's shot his arrow to try and hunt the little rodent creature. I don't know what kind of the little rodent, and he's sort of vaulting himself over a rock to get at it. The level, the dynamic nature of the art, as well as the detail, really caught my attention. The whole book is just super detailed. I guess when it comes to the art, and I appreciate you're not the artist, but the level of detail in the expressions, how eyes sit on the face, the muscles that pull your eyes into a frown or stuff like that, it's fantastic. And I think one thing that particularly caught my attention was the shadows. So the artists have really taken a lot of time and patience to basically calculate out with complex things like hair and stuff in the environment where weird shadows would hit the face. How much of that is just your artists doing their thing, and how much of that was you being like, I want to intentionally show this?
Well, it's a process, a back and forth process. I mean, I'm not going to take more credit than I deserve, but I certainly pushed for as much detail as humanly possible.
Nice.
And I asked for top quality. I said, I want the highest level that you can achieve as an artist. And they delivered it. And I guess there is that back and forth. Some panels I'm not in love with. I'll say, can you add a little more detail? Okay. But a lot of the facial expressions and the shadows and the fabrics, I mean, that's all those guys. That's all the detail that he's putting in there. And the love, you can see every little pen stroke is there's a lot of love that he's putting in there.
Yeah. I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe it's done digitally. Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. Because the sheer level of detail. One thing I talk a lot about, Paul, when I'm talking about like comparing one artist to another is, like the famous big names people know. And one of my personal favorite artists is Tony Daniel, specifically because of how they do cloth, right? I first saw them drawing Batman back in 2011, and when they had Batman's cowl and the way the mask moved, it would wrinkle in like it would look like this. And it was insane to me to have that. And your artists have done that and then some. When it comes to, especially Miro's, like, when he's throwing his cape off to give it to Sage, and the way his pants sit. So yeah, like the level of detail you're having them inject and that they're bringing to this book is crazy. So I really can't wait to see like a close-up of this castle where you've designed all this stuff, because that'll be like, whoa. So I guess what's been your favorite part so far about making this?
Seeing it come to life, working with John Lee and Mikola, and we have a lettering artist, Jessica, or Jess, and a lot of other great artists that I've worked with to create this project. There are some background artists that helped to develop the world, and I mean, there's a few more there, and working with them to bring this to life. That's what we all have in common as creators or storytellers. We all have a vision, and we want to bring it to life. We want to make new life. Some people like to do it with new humans, and that's a great experience as well. I'm a father, so I love that experience. But there's something special about this world, and we all I think there's that. I just feel like the best is still yet to come. Like I think it's so easy to say, oh, the 20th century was like when all the best movies were made, and like there's never going to be a good movie made that's going to top Star Wars. Well, I beg to differ. I think we can reach new heights. We have better technology. We have everything they have and more. The internet is a tremendous tool for communication and for resources. We have everything at our disposal. And so what? Hollywood's going in the crapper. That doesn't matter. We can band together and make, better art. So just making this dream come true and seeing these small wins, add up, and seeing my Kickstarter pre-launch. It's only issue 1. I'm putting myself out there, which I've never really done before. But seeing people still, even though they've never seen it, they don't know anything about me, they don't know my comic, but they like the little taste that I've given them. And so I'm really, it's all, I guess, building and fulfilling that whole process.
Awesome. And I'm glad you're enjoying it so much. What to ask next?
I think we had a question in regards to the dark nature of the to use the word darkness again. But the element of the world in which Myro's living, that it's already kind of in a state of apocalypse or doom or what have you.
Absolutely. So when reading through the book, in a lot of fantasy games, because this is, I think, tactically how a lot of people come into this, when you play like God, I'm gonna date myself. Lunar, which is an old PlayStation game, or Final Fantasy, or I don't know, The Witcher. In a lot of these games, yeah, the state of the world when you start playing is usually not destroyed, but it's like there's the big bad guy. He's clearly doing stuff, and if we don't stop him, it's gonna all go to hell, basically. And then in a lot of those games, that does happen. Then you got to bring it back. In this world, in the world of Moonstone, it's already like it looks like it's gone to hell. Everything's wrong. Near the end of the issue, when we do see Miro get near his castle, things are not good. I don't want to spoil it, but just things are not good.
Could be better.
Could be better. And like you said, that it definitely appears that darkness, that force, whatever it is definitely impacting the world. And now knowing your story that you told about the owls and the crows, yeah, there's a lot of crows. So yeah, can you talk about sort of the state of the world, I guess, and the impact the darkness has had?
So the darkness in itself is, as we mentioned, it's Sage's inner turmoil or what have you, or her past, her dark past. So that's really the essence of darkness. I mean, I did have a bit of a creation story, as you may have noticed in the beginning, where I wrote a little blurb about the light meeting the dark and that being creation. And in essence, that storm is representative of creation, and that creation story follows into the culture of the people in Moonstone. So they're not like pagan, but they respect or they worship the stars' celestial bodies and fire, the elements. So they have that's kind of their religion. So I've tried to create a bit of a, I don't want to go too deep into the religious aspect, but there's a spirituality to their culture. So my big inspiration. So I love history and thinking about the medieval ages. So it's a fantasy film. It's based in a medieval period. For those people living in that period in our world, you looked at the great civilizations of Rome, say you're in Italy, and you're seeing a society which is looks illustrious and has technology that you yourself or your whole culture doesn't even understand. So I wanted to add that into the story, and that is apparent in their world. It's a world that's fallen from grace, and not so much through the actions of the people, but I think it's more reference that it's ecological, earthquakes, a famine, the arid conditions. So something that obviously some people might find somewhat relevant today. We won't go there. And but also it's also ties back into my earlier statement regarding Miro and his childhood, which he looked upon a future of, great things. And so that represents him as a person. The world is representative of Miro's character. The childhood status of their great kingdom is now falling to ruin, and it's representing his inner turmoil as well. So it's all connected in that sense.
So we're near the end of the interview. So I do want to make sure we recap for the folks that are here still. What's the best way for them to support you, and how can they get Moonstone?
So my website, moonstonesaga.com. So the Moonstone Saga is the encapsulation of the entire, world story, whether it be 1, 2, 3 up to infinity. So moonstonesaga.com. And my website is being developed. It's got everything there. The social links are there. Updates in regards to the Kickstarter campaign, press, whatever, reviews, these kinds of things that are, important to the fans or whatever. So that would be the hub that I would recommend people visit. And to obtain the copy of Moonstone issue 1, Well, the Kickstarter campaign is the best obvious way to do that, to get on board. After the Kickstarter campaign, to be honest, that's something to be considered. I haven't really figured out where my final platform would be. I've approached publishers, and I think people are, they're reluctant to. They want to see more. Issue 1 is a nice thing, but I think if I had all 10, it would be a different story. So we're still unsure of how to push the book once it's done. I know Kickstarter has its own marketplace, so that could be a venue that we would definitely consider.
Well, what I will recommend, just through me doing what I do and talking to the folks I talk to, one, again, folks out there, first link down below, go hit the notify me page. So on May 2nd, when this releases, you can just back it and get your book and not have to worry about this. If you're watching this after, it's going to run for 30 days.
Yes.
So if you're watching this after June 1st or 2nd, whenever that...
Somewhere in that neck of the woods.
Yeah, somewhere in there. If now is when you're watching it, what I would recommend for you, Paul, is I have seen pages now, Kickstarter pages, where people can pull up the old campaign, but there's like a buy my comic button, which I believe redirects them to another website. But also highly would recommend offer it digitally. Yes, physical is king in my world anyway, but folks might like it digitally. So definitely, yeah, there's avenues out there for you to be able to get it in people's hands. But yes, May 2nd, folks, link down below. So, Paul, we've talked a lot about your comic, and I love it. And I think it's important, though, that people get to know you as well, and they'll, from your excitement, they'll know you. But I like to ask the nerdy stuff. So I have to ask, on your wall behind you, you have a Full Metal Jacket with little windows in it. What is that?
Try not to drop it. This is a collector's item, and it's Full Metal Jacket, original, and I don't know if you're seeing my webcam more than you're seeing the film bits, but these are original cells from the film. They could be outtakes, but we've got one, Joker's screaming, we've got one, he's chatting up a Vietnamese prostitute. So these are real film cells from the movie Full Metal Jacket. So yeah, it's awesome. I mean, obviously I've got 2001 here. We've got A Clockwork Orange somewhere else in the house here. And so I'm obviously a huge Kubrick fan, as you can guess. So yeah, that's a great collector's item that I'm very happy to show off.
Oh, hell yeah. Normally when I ask the question, I ask it in this way, which is of all the stuff that you collect, because often those who create comics, they read comics, they collect figures, they build model. We're nerds, generally speaking, is what I'm saying. And I normally say, like, what is the most, what's like the key thing to your collection? Maybe not the most expensive, maybe not the most rare, but what's that thing that when you see it, you're like, hell yeah, I get this thing, it's mine. What is that for you? Is it one of your many various film cell collections? Like, what's that thing?
Well, I am not. I'm a bit particular with my comics. Superhero comics turn me off a little bit. It might be, the 10th Batman or the 10th Spider-Man that ruined it for me. No, I mean, obviously people love it. It's part of your childhood, and I did enjoy it when I was a kid. But I'm superhero comics. They don't do it for me. I like, obviously, as you may have known, real characters, real drama. So I love to get hardcover if I can, so that I can, keep these books for the rest of my life. And I just grabbed a few here. I have a bookshelf in the other room with more, but I have Kairos from Ulysses Malebranche, which is an amazing graphic novel about and it was an inspiration for me about transporting. I don't know if I should show it. I don't know if he'd like that, but
yeah, if you don't mind, show it off.
I don't want to get sued, but it's a beautiful book, and the artwork is just, it's second to none. Like, let me just try to find a page that's half decent here. Well, it's all gorgeous, but like this is reminiscent of my Stormy scene. Trust me, I didn't just rip this. But it's beautiful. Like, so another one that I just love and is Coda. Yeah, you know Coda, of course. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, so I mean the character and the lettering artist and the visual artist and everyone was so on point with that book. It really, like, I'd never seen a lettering artist put so much character with it. It's a fantastic experience, and the world that they created, once again, the depth that they generated, a whole new language of stuff that becomes second nature to the reader in no time. So for me, it's these deep, rich, beautiful stories that really suck you in and are, you know, unique in their own right as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like for me personally, when people think of like, oh, what's your favorite quote? And, you know, sometimes they quote Shakespeare. The one you hear a lot from, like, I don't know, a lot of people is, you know, from Tolkien, actually, you know, not all those who wander are lost, not all that glitters is gold. The one for me comes from Coda, issue 10, which is, blank pages are the best. What is it? Yeah, blank pages are the best mirrors if you give them the chance. And I loved that series.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's about the, you know, it's shining through that. It's about the writer. It's his experience as a writer, and, you know, that shines above all. But the world he's created around this kind of this character who's really nothing special, but it's his words that give him power. And I think, and as a writer, that is all you really are. You know, you create words, and they generate hopefully some income from that. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting too, because after talking with you for the hour we've talked and going through Moonstone rather thoroughly, I can definitely draw some of the ideological, maybe is the right word, or methodological connections between Coda and Moonstone, or frankly, like I mentioned earlier, Tolkien, how he was so meticulous in creating the world he did. So it's cool to see it and to get to know you, Paul.
Thank you, Konrad. Nice meeting you too.
Absolutely, thank you. I guess, you know what? I think that'll be second last question. My last question I'll ask then, Paul, is what would you recommend other people read that is sort of currently out?
Well, I recently, another book that I just recently read that's, I think, fairly new. I don't know if it's brand new, but I'm going to be in trouble. Anyways, I was told not to do that, and I did that. Anyways, oh boy. Well, you just cost me pretty big there, Connor, and I'm just kidding. For those viewers at home, this isn't my office. This is my wife's office, and I think I just broke something of hers. Anyways, this was gold, and it was worth everything. The book Nottingham from Mad Cave, and it's a really interesting read. It's a fiction based historical fiction, and it's a mystery story, and there's a bit of darkness and mystery that comes along with it. I'll give you the names of the creators here. And so the writer is David Hazen, the artist is Shane Volk, colorist Luca Romano, and letterer Jomet Gill. And I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with this book, but I enjoyed it, and it's more recent than I guess some of these others that I just showcased.
Fair, yeah. No, I love asking that question because I've heard of Nottingham. I knew it existed. I've never heard of those creators, so thank you for highlighting them. And absolutely, Paul, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show tonight.
Well, thank you.
And for the folks at home, absolutely comment down below what you thought of Paul, and click that first link, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize, never miss new comic day, yeah, no surprise, so where's my no prize, check the letter columns, can't find issue 2, yeah. Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries, you need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it, true believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover tie-in. High flying, full color or black and white. Splash pages, flashbacks, whet your appetite. With new costumes, team-ups, first loves, first appearances, death.